to stimulate Leydig cells as an LH mimic, literal, actual luteinizing hormone, and they're releasing factors like buserelin, ganadorelin, triptorelin. So it's like, okay, well, what can you get away with then? And again, when you have these like big spikes in LH, is that something that you might see from GnRH agonists? Like, if you guys don't know what GnRH agonists are, these are compounds that basically stimulate the HPTA axis. Functions through like a variety of feedback loops, or it's like one big feedback loop essentially, and your hypothalamus stimulates your pituitary to produce luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone via the release of GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. And if you have a GnRH agonist like a triptorelin, it is basically stimulating your pituitary to output more LH and FSH, because it kind of depends on the situation in which it's deployed, but oftentimes it's used for people who have like dysfunction via their hypothalamus and they are not able to actually stimulate their pituitary adequately. Or another wild scenario is it's used to actually castrate sex offenders. Yeah, fucking wild. Actually literally like castrate like pedophiles and shit. So this is something that if you push too hard with a triptorelin, you probably have heard of this if you're, in the bodybuilding space and, you've looked at, PCT tactics and whatnot. Triptorelin is seen as the sketchy one because it's available via a lot of these research chemical websites as an underground product. But if it's misdosed, this is a product that comes as a very, very low dosage concentration in this like lyophilized puck of powder, and you reconstitute it and you just hope it's accurately dosed, because if it's not, you are potentially playing with fire, where you are playing with a compound that is literally used on sex offenders to castrate them. Because if you overstimulate the pituitary and you can sort of burn it out, so to speak. If you like overstimulate it, you have this giant surge in LH and FSH initially, and then it kind of crashes. And it's a result of, they literally use this to like, even in certain studies for like the most classic graded dose response study for assessing testosterone's effects on body composition and whatnot, they use the GnRH agonist to actually keep these guys essentially like pseudo castrated while they administer these different dosages of testosterone to assess exactly what the testosterone dosages were doing with no like cross contamination, so to speak, from endogenous hormone fuckery. But again, are you going to recover from this? Like, and is this what DC is doing? Is he manipulating his, LH output with, one of these compounds? Like, there's not a whole lot you can get away with still, even with this list, but, back then things are a little bit more lenient. And even now, like, what is the actual test parameters for like a luteinizing hormone, for example? That is where we get into the problem of anti-doping and luteinizing hormone levels. So what has been changed since then? They've added some other GnRH agonists, like we have deslorelin, goserelin, leuprorelin, nafarelin. We have the classic triptorelin, ganadorelin, chorionic gonadotropin, luteinizing hormone. So it looks like a relatively similar list with some changes. Now again, some of these compounds, if they weren't on the list in 2015, they're just not testing for them because they don't have a test developed for it, or they don't know it exists yet, or whatever. So is there not, Chinese, suppliers and, chemists and whatnot that are producing novel agents that do these same sort of functions and are, abandoned Frankenstein GnRH agonists, or they manipulate them and create their own for, tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands? Of course there's fucking people doing this shit. However, based on the actual testosterone levels and the luteinizing hormone output, I think people are a little bit quick to jump the trigger on this guy when the actual cutoff values are not as far off, from what I can tell, based on some of the assays that are developed to actually assess LH. Now the problem with this shit is that these metrics they're so primitive, they're basically just using threshold limits. They don't actually differentiate between recombinant versus endogenous versus whatever, like you would have with a carbon isotope ratio or an HGH isoform differential immunoassay to actually differentiate between endogenous versus exogenous. They're literally using like threshold values because that's the best they could do at this time. So we have here, based on these Delphion and Immulite assays, cutoff values of 40 IU per liter and 60 IU per liter, depending on the assay deployed. And this was back in, I forget what year this was exactly, but this was an assessment for like a novel way to analyze luteinizing hormone levels and kind of elucidating some of the shortcomings of these tests and whatnot. So, this is actually a very interesting article in itself, but the kind of breakdown was assessing the, threshold values, what could be used to improve it, This study, a new micro-well format assay, was evaluated to measure urinary LH for doping control purposes. The method was proven to fill the objectives of the quality for doping control purposes, even though the assay is designed for serum matrix. Validation process in urine demonstrated that the assay is fit to purpose in that matrix. No differences were observed between LH concentrations in serum and urine matrix. And again, they were trying to use, like, some of these tests can't even like detect the difference between like actual synthetic analogs of these things that are stimulating the same receptors. So they come up with more and more, try and get away from the primitiveness and try to come up with cheap, easily reproducible assays that are then going to be like hyper specific for actual endogenous hormone production based on like minor variations and like isoforms and kilodalton weights and whatnot, or ratios between these different isoforms. And that's kind of how they detect things like, you know, growth hormone, but we've seen how fucking finicky that is and how, you know, unsuccessful it's been in actually detecting people. But I digress. The whole point is that this shit is hard to detect, and ultimately, even if you're assessing this thing through like a luteinizing hormone test, we don't even know for sure that their threshold value was crossed here. So is it possible that Daniel was using something like a, you know, GnRH agonist or like a straight up LH, recombinant LH, and he just didn't cross like a 60 IU per liter cutoff? You know, possible, but then that begs the question, if he's willing to use those during those tests, you know, 2 weeks out, why would he not have deployed them when he is using, why would he not keep them, you know, around the competition to maintain his hormone production when he is, you know, crashing and doing the harsh, you know, water cutting? So for me, you know, this kind of, like, it's definitely notable. I would definitely look at it further, and I'm sure they definitely, you know, saw it. I would imagine they would see it and be like, huh, like that's pretty fucking high. Or like it's borderline crossing threshold values and be like, what's up with that? Like that's, you know, reasonably fucking high proportionally to what we're used to seeing. But there is data to show, you know, the contrary as well. And we have some, like, for example, this study, the problem of anti-doping control of luteinizing hormone in boxing. They did a comparison of the descriptive statistics for 426 luteinizing hormone values observed in boxing and other sports, showing significant differences. An experimental study comparing urinary LH levels in 17 boxers before and after a match demonstrated a clear increase after the match. Same observation was made for urinary follicle stimulating hormone in all of the 8 boxers tested for this other pituitary gonadotropin. These observations have consequences for anti-doping controls, as the reference range for urinary LH levels must take into account specificities of boxers. They also suggest consequences for the health of boxers. Although to our knowledge, such observations have never been described, other pituitary disorders have been reported. Now again, obviously, when you're looking at values, it's like, do you even know for sure that the people you're evaluating weren't doping themselves? You know, all of this is to be questioned, of course, but here we have LH and testosterone urinary concentrations in the 8 samples from boxers reported with abnormally elevated LH. Here we had LH levels of 62, 44.9, 60, 51.6, 46.1, 49, 40, 65.3, with concurrent test levels of 27, 7, 36, 55, 29, 25, 25, 20. And the conclusion, and this sort of circles back to the, you know, importance of a blood matrix, in my opinion, for actual gonadotropin output and some of the shortcomings of this shit when it comes to endogenous hormone levels. But anyways, observations have 2 consequences. First is related to anti-doping control. If the threshold value for reporting an abnormally elevated concentration of urinary, oh, by the way, of the 17 urine samples collected after the match, none gave rise to an LH level exceeding 40. And this was not surprising, since our previous studies of 426 values collected from boxers over 4 years have shown only 2% of the urine samples gave rise to LH levels more than 40. So again, like more than 40 is like considered a relatively odd result. So yeah, it definitely begs the question, like what assay was used in the DC test result for that 45 LH level, and then did it have a 60 cutoff, a 40 cutoff? What does this longitudinal data look like? But anyway, circling back to this, there is a clear risk of misinterpreted results in boxing. This must be taken into account in the future. Technical document from WADA, and a recommendation might be made to perform only out of competition controls in boxing. Second is related to health in boxing. Brain damage has been extensively described in the sport. Pituitary dysfunction has been reported, and in particular, has been shown that chronic head trauma may lead to growth hormone and or ACTH deficiencies. To our knowledge, the observation of an increased urinary level of LH and FSH after a match has never been reported and deserves further investigation. Many urine samples are collected for anti-doping control after intensive physical exercise, and many of them show high protein levels due to effort Proteinuria of both glomerular and tubular origin. In addition to boxing, many other sports induce proteinuria, which seems to indicate that the prevalence of high urinary LH levels in boxing is not related to increased excretion of this hormone in urine. However, it will be important to investigate LH in blood. In addition, the other hormones produced by the anterior pituitary should be explored: GH, ACTH, prolactin, TSH, as well as those secreted by the posterior pituitary. Whatever the origin of high urinary LH levels after a boxing match, from an anti-doping control perspective, they need to be taken into account in order to reduce the risk of reporting false positive results. So again, objectively, could this have been like an aberrant reading that deserved to be looked into further? It definitely would have been worthwhile to assess, you know, longitudinal data of LH levels, which in their urine analysis, they are definitely looking at. But I mean, ultimately for him, what I can tell, and the amount of reserves he has from an energy storage capacity aspect, for me, like, I'm not necessarily giving it a pass or anything, but I'm thinking it may be explainable by natural means. But it definitely would be questionable as to, okay, were you using a LH analog of sorts, or an LH secretagogue, or a GnRH agonist of sorts that is undetectable, or a recombinant LH or something, and is, you know, spiking your LH levels in urine. You know, kind of, it's all, you know, possible for sure. However, it would make me definitely question if he's willing to use this twice, literally during the test. Like, obviously on the first one, his LH levels weren't wildly different. Like, we had a 50 test with a 39.2, like right on the threshold of 40 LH. So if he literally got tested when he was using a GnRH agonist or something like that, do you really think, like, to me, I'm trying to wrap my head around a guy having these test results and then going on to actually not only continue to use the same shit, but then like end up with a 70 test this time, deeper into competition prep with a 45.7 LH, and then getting away with it, and then not continuing to use it into the actual competition, unless his crashing through the weight cut, or the, you know, the water manipulation and the concurrent weight cutting that ensued during the last couple weeks here was so significant that it would somehow offset the effects of a GnRH agonist in some capacity. You know, ultimately, I do not think he actually did that. That would be my speculation personally. I think this is definitely worthwhile to look at, and I imagine they did. But you're not gonna be able to prove anything, unfortunately, through this one. But it definitely looks suspect, and it is iffy, you know? It's definitely an odd result, but if it were me, and I was, you know, if DC was actually using something throughout this time frame, I would imagine he definitely would have either reeled back after the first test, or continued to push full board into the competition. You know, sometimes these guys will cut, like, you know, dozens of fucking pounds, you know, in the last few days, to actually make weight and then super compensate back up. Like, it's gonna take its toll on your body for sure. And for him, you know, I imagine this is a, you know, obviously a giant misinterpretation of his testosterone levels with this 7,000. For me, seeing this again, at best, he is using a GnRH agonist or some sort of novel compound sporadically, seemingly. But I just don't think he would have done it, given that I don't see the consistency in its use throughout the entirety of this process. Because again, like, if you're going to be trying to derive all the benefits from it, like, are you going to let yourself, are you going to pull it out, you know, before the competition if you've already been tested twice while you knew you were fucking using it? Like, I would imagine not. And I imagine this is more to do with his unique body composition and the way he go about preparing for competitions relative to a normal athlete. But could be wrong on that for sure. But to me, this testosterone level is being widely misinterpreted, and people are throwing DC under the bus very, very haphazardly without really digging further and even realizing this is a urine analysis, not a blood test analysis. But cool nonetheless to see the, you know, full spectrum of data, and this definitely is a interesting reading that I'm sure, you know, raised some eyebrows at least. Because if I was the testing agency, you know, I would at least, you know, be digging into this a bit further. You would hope they would have. But anyway, that is my analysis. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. All the comments help the algorithm. They're much appreciated. Like, subscribe, check out my blog. MorePlaceMoreDates.com. Follow me on Instagram at MorePlaceMoreDates, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below. My preventative medicine, hormone replacement therapy platform, Gorilla Mind, nootropic formulas, Gorilla Mode, pre-workout formulas designed myself, recommended diet model for gaining muscle and sports performance, whilst being mindful of micronutrient intake and actual, hormone synthesis and whatnot. A lot of diets are simply focused on macros rather than also considerate of micros and actual health. So yeah, definitely recommend that if you are looking for a 101 guide to building muscle, as well as, sports performance, electrolyte balance. A lot of those things are considerate in the diet model as well. And anything else that supports me, it's all in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.
Let me think. Give us the money. Don't try anything.
Behold, jewels of the sun.
Enhanced.
We will hold the Black Temple!
I know you had a pretty bad accident like a few months ago, right?
I actually did, yeah. I actually broke my jaw.
I'm observing your jaw to see you had it wired shut and all that.
I did. I was like running through my house and I slipped and fell and hit my face.
If he was going to get plastic surgery, he wouldn't get that. Come on.
You got a good jaw, man.
No,
Oh my god. You're just stirring the pot.
No, it was funny. It sucked. I almost died, but we're good.
But you're good now.
Yeah.
Good.
What's up, guys? Derek, moreplates48.com. Today we are revisiting Jawgate, the Zac Efron debacle from last year where he showed up looking nearly unrecognizable, seemingly in a overnight time frame. Like the guy has looked, like a High School Musical, pretty face, one of the best looking guys in the industry for years. He's seen as the pretty boy, Baywatch lifeguard guy, Zac Efron, the fucking ladies' man. Now, all of a sudden he shows up to this Bill Nye interview or promotional or whatever it was last year and looks nearly unrecognizable, resembling, classic handsome Squidward is kind of what a lot of people were saying. And that sort of plays into potentially some of the motivations behind it. But a lot of people are wondering, is this, and I'll get into what I mean by that later, but a lot of people are wondering, is this plastic surgery? Is this, wisdom teeth removal? Did he injure himself? Is he using copious amounts of human growth hormone? Was one of the, prevalent ones as well as anabolic steroids that cause bloating in your face. Like you see a lot of mass added here. The guy has like an entirely new chin essentially. His jaw is way wider. all of a sudden these features are more masculine and protruding. A lot of people would say not in a positive manner though, because it's so dramatically different from the before that it almost is essentially a different human entirely. Like, this is a side-by-side of an interview that he did, I don't know, like a late night show here on the left, looking like his normal self, and then him on the right during the promotional video that kind of took the internet by storm and had people freaking the fuck out. And a lot of, you know, speculation ensued, you know, a lot of, you know, theories were drawn, etc. And a lot of people thought it would just go away. You know, people thought it was just a temporary thing. He probably had his wisdom teeth removal. Like, this was a very, very famous and well-known social media influencer that I believe is also a plastic surgeon, super popular on TikTok and YouTube. And he basically said, I think this is wisdom teeth removal. This was last year around August, and this was months after the reveal. And here it is, doctor diagnoses Zac Efron's face.
Everybody is talking about Zac Efron and how strange he looks. Has he had plastic surgery to reshape his jawline, Botox, or fillers? I don't think so. I actually think he's had dental surgery, not plastic surgery. That's why he's swollen in these areas. If you've had your wisdom teeth taken out, did you look like this?
That is a wild stretch of a fucking reach in my opinion, and I don't think anyone, if you've had wisdom teeth removal, we can all attest to some swelling, significant irritation, blah, 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 but for it to remain for a year and a half at this point, like, we are closing in on the end of 2022. Well, you know, coming in on Q4 here pretty hot, and Zac still looks the same. This is a shot of him at a promotional for some event the other day. And I did, you know, kind of like a chronological timeline in this last video about, you know, the changes and whatnot, how he's looked historically, some of the, you know, very, very bold claims as well. Like, this is plastic surgeon, Dr. Michael Obang. Zac looks very healthy. He might be on supplements such as HGH and testosterone. He might also have had some facial fillers to build his cheeks. So it's like, you know, obviously right up my alley, the HGH testosterone claim. Is he doing like bodybuilding, aggressive shit in order to undergo like crazy acromegalic development changes? So what we'll get into, because this is now a long-standing thing. This is not just a wisdom teeth removal as asserted by Tony Yoon MD, or, you know, probably not an injury either, let's be honest. The guy, you know, if he fell and had some, like, I don't know, like a break in his jaw or something, and then he has some swelling from, you know, wiring his mouth shut or whatever, is it going to, like, stay with you for fucking a year and a half? If this is what he is looking like, this seems to be permanent changes. That is just what he is living with at this point. And I think, you know, his fans and whatnot should accept, regardless of what the outcome was, that this seems to be something that is sticking around. I don't think that this is something that is going to go away, and it seems to be representative of his current look at this point. Anytime he is shot by the paparazzi or at official events, he very much looks like this at this point. But again, like I mentioned briefly, and I'm getting to now, finally, he has actually talked about it in an interview. He's been avoiding it for a while, or just stays off the internet. Apparently he's very good at it. But apparently he's had multiple injuries. So is this in fact a jaw break, a new one? Because he has had multiple injuries. About 4 years ago, in the span of a year and a half, he tore his ACL, dislocated his shoulder, broke his wrist, wrote his back. He also shattered his jaw, Zac says, though that was not a training injury. He'd been running through his house in socks and slipped, smacking his chin against the granite corner of a fountain. He lost consciousness, and when he woke up, he recalls his chin bone hanging off his face. That would be fucking terrifying, I can imagine. I study him as he eats a crab leg. His jaw area looks much as it has always looked. This may be salient intel for some, because in April 2021, after Efron appeared in a clip promoting an Earth Day special from Bill Nye, the internet came alive with chatter about Efron's body, this time with speculation that he had plastic surgery on his face. So the Men's Health interviewer actually asked him about this, and apparently he says, Zac, that the masseter muscles used for chewing work together with the other muscles of the face like a symphony. When he was injured, the muscles on the inside of his face and jaw had to compensate. Zac works with a specialist and does physical therapy to mediate this, he says. But in Australia, he took some time off from that too. The masseters just grew, he says, shrugging. They just got really, really big. Efron says he didn't know about Jawgate until his mother called to ask if he'd gotten plastic surgery, because though he appreciates that social media can be useful for promoting projects he cares about, he generally avoids it. This is a survival tactic, one that he has been owning since he became a public figure at 17. If I valued what other people thought of me to the extent that they might think I do, I definitely wouldn't be able to do this work. So a lot of people, ran with that, made stories, a lot of publicists, tabloids, pop culture news. There's a lot of TikTok channels and whatnot kind of summarizing the situation and giving their insights. And the comment section is pretty, some of it is pretty polarizing. But let's get, this is one of the videos that actually caught my attention initially and kind of, led me down the rabbit hole of the situation again.
Zac Efron is clearing the air on his viral face transformation from 2021. That resulted in his face looking like this. This caused so many plastic surgery rumors and people were going in on Zac. Zac is the 2022 Men's Health cover star, and in his interview, he talks about it. He says that he shattered his jaw while running in his house with socks on. Ouch. Zac says that he slipped and hit the corner of a fountain, and that he passed out and woke up to his chin bone hanging off his face. While Zac was in recovery, his facial muscles got really, really big. I guess his muscles were overcompensating from the injury, so he worked with a physical therapist to counteract their growth. And when Zac took a break in Australia, the muscles just grew. When this went viral in April 2021, Zac's friend came out and denied the rumors that he got plastic surgery. And his mom was actually the one who told him that everyone thought he had got work done because he's not really on social media. But Zac wasn't really fazed. He tells Men's Health, "If I valued the way people thought about me to the extent that they think I do, I definitely wouldn't be able to do this work." Zac has had many injuries that he talks about in the interview, but one thing's for sure, this man is so handsome, always has been and always will be. Let me know your thoughts down below.
So, as you would expect, the comment section, a little bit divided, but a lot of people are saying he has 100% had work done. Recent interview shows his cheeks, eyes, lips, and jawline are all different. I don't believe him at all. Literally crying face. I don't know, it didn't look like he got plastic surgery to me. It looked like his face was just swollen. I don't believe this at all. Okay, but who runs in the house with socks on over the age of 10? I believe that. The only difference in his face is his jaw and lips. You can pull up the comments and see from the lips up, he looks the same. Love Zac regardless of anything, to be honest. It's the third Bogdanov brother. I mean, I don't get why people don't believe it. It clearly still looks swollen. Jaw surgery takes a lot to heal. Accidents happen. I'll believe it when I see his face go back to normal. Crying, laughing face times a million. I don't believe him for a second. People who don't believe this have never seen the dramatic difference that jaw injury / movements make to the face. So the thing that was kind of weird about this is he's talking about this jaw injury that happened. He slips, he falls, he breaks his jaw in the fountain. He has this dramatic issue. It's literally like it almost killed him. Like he says here in another interview recently, he is kind of, under the microscope at this point after actually opening up about it. And in this ET interview, they actually grill him on it live in a video, which, this Men's Health one was just seemingly a snippet from like the written portion they just transcribed, whereas the actual Men's Health video that they filmed didn't have that part in it whatsoever. But in this ET one, they actually get into it and goes viral, over 1 million views right now. And she asks straight up, like, what's up? People are talking about plastic surgery and you had this injury that happened. Like, is there the overlap in that? Explain how this dramatic fucking difference happened, and he kind of goes into it, but you can tell he's a little bit not thrilled with the topic coming up.
Okay, you had to recently dispel rumors that you had undergone plastic surgery. You actually experienced your jaw being shattered, in 2013?
So this is the weird thing. The wording, the selection of words here. Listen very carefully.
Plastic surgery. You actually experienced your jaw being shattered, in 2013?
So, you experienced your jaw being shattered in 2013, but the start of it...
Okay, you had to recently dispel rumors that you had undergone plastic surgery. You actually experienced your jaw being shattered, in 2013?
What, in 2013? As in literally almost a decade ago. Yeah, almost a decade ago, and he's about to touch on it and explain the massive difference, essentially, that accounts for what's happening right now, presumably, but from 2013.
What did you make of the speculation online? Your mom was even the one that brought it up to you, like, what's going on? Why did you feel like you had to address those rumors now?
I didn't really.
No?
I didn't feel it at all.
You
When my mom told me, I don't really read the internet, so I don't really give
So as you can tell pretty easily, he doesn't seem very thrilled to talk about this whatsoever. He is like, almost coming across like a little bit confrontational to what she says. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm not the one who's bringing this up. This is not something that I deem important to discuss whatsoever. And it is not even a topic of conversation.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was just, if that's the direction that it was going, maybe
if he was going to get plastic surgery, he wouldn't get that. Come on.
You got a good job, man.
No,
Oh my.
So this is a really awkward interaction because it's like this guy, I don't think he knows what the fuck's going on. Like I'm sure believes Zach, thoroughly. And when Zach says that, he had his jaw hanging off of his face in 2013, smacking a fountain. Again, running through his house in socks, slipped, smacking his chin on the granite corner of a fountain, lost consciousness when he wakes up, chin bone hanging off his face. When you tell people that, if you're literal partner in whatever it is that, whatever project they're working on, whatever, like a lot of these people have no idea what goes into like human growth hormone, acromegaly, plastic surgery, fucking dental work. Like, the layman is just going to be like, yeah, that's probably what actually happened. Why would he lie about it? And he's, on board, and he's like, but makes a comment that's pretty fucking rough. If indeed this was plastic surgery, he's like, if he was gonna get plastic surgery, he wouldn't get that. Like, come on. And Zach's just like, and you can tell, at least from what I perceive, it's touchy, because it's like, I would say the likelihood is higher than not that there was something cosmetic done here. But, and then, the ET interviewer, chimes in. She's like, come on, you got a good job, bro. And it's just fucking awkward, dude.
Wouldn't get that. Come on.
You got a good job, man.
Nah, I'm kidding.
Oh my God. You're just stirring the pot.
No, it was funny. It sucked. I almost died, but we're good.
But you're good now?
Yeah.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Very awkward. Very, very awkward. Yeah, he's trying to get off the subject. It's fucking terrible. Don't make jokes about it. It actually sucked. I almost died. Fuck you. Basically what he's saying, trying to get off the subject, and then this very, very awkward finale to the conversation to try and get off the subject. You're good now. Yup. Just short, not sweet. Not short and sweet, just short. And it's not very pleasant of an interaction, as you can tell.
No, it was funny. It sucked. I almost died, but we're good.
But you're good now?
Yeah.
Good. That's good to see you in a healthy, happy place.
Thank you.
Very awkward. And then they go on to talk about the project, but you can tell Zach's like, get this fucking topic, get off this topic. I don't like it. And he does not want to be talking about it whatsoever. And I would understand too, like, even if he did have work done, the whole point of getting work done presumably is that for it to be so subtle and well done that people don't even recognize it as actual surgery. It's just like, you just look younger or better. And it's so, insignificantly different, or is so representative of natural features that you just think that he is progressing in a way that he's like, maturing like fine wine, or, whatever. And it's not representative of going like heavily under the knife for some significant thing. So circling back to, a lot of people hear this and they're like, okay, it's clearly this injury. He slipped, fell, broke his jaw like dramatically, and now the recovery process, he was swollen. And then he has this, counterbalancing of muscular hypertrophy. Like he says here, the masseters, they just grew. They got really, really big. So, when you're not working the muscles, you have these, the compensation of other muscles that in order to support, normal functions on a day-to-day basis. It sounds like a reasonable hypothesis, right? But again, we're talking about something that happened in 2013. So I'm not really sure where people are gathering this conclusion, like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Like, okay, totally get it. Like, not only does this not make sense to me from the actual hypertrophy context, but in addition, the timeline is not even close. So unless this was a second new injury, like, it sounds very much like he's describing this incident that happened in literally 2013. So if you dig hard enough, you can find some of these articles. Zac Efron breaks jaw after accidental fall at home, November 13th, 2013. Actor's mouth is wired shut. You won't be seeing Zach for a while, or Smile for a while. E! News has exclusively learned that the actor's mouth is wired shut after he broke his jaw over the weekend. And even in this interview, she even says, like, in 2013, and then they talk about, how his face looks different now. And it's like they're literally discussing a 2013 incident.
Okay, you had to recently dispel rumors that you had undergone plastic surgery. You actually experienced your jaw being shattered, in 2013? What did you make?
In 2013. Yeah, I did. And then, discussing it as if it's like, he's literally answering the question about a 2013 incident, and like, it's very, very much almost seemingly a diversion tactic of sorts. Or just like straight up answering the question. Like, you can't really fault him for it, but I mean, it just doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever. So he not only broke his jaw when he fell, but he also suffered a gash that required stitches. And it was slipping at the entrance of his home in a puddle of water that he didn't see. But they go into this in an interview that has since been deleted from the internet, seemingly. So this was more news about it. Breaks his jaw after falling at home, mouth wired shut. Here it was not just broken jaw, gash that required stitches. So again, this was back when he was 25 years old, years ago. 2013, has his mouth wired shut. He's drinking through a straw. and he actually loses a bunch of weight. This was one of the follow-up articles, photographed for the first time since breaking his jaw, goes skateboarding. So when we see his face here, this is back in 2013 in December, after that, you know, jaw wired shut for 6 weeks scenario where he shattered his jaw on the fountain. He is seen skateboarding and looking like this, which is literally what he would normally look like, you know, from what I can tell. So from the inception of his career in High School Musical and getting closer to 2021, he has basically just looked like a normal, maturing guy who is very, very good looking. And even through this incident, when he literally slipped, fell, smashed his chin on this granite fountain, he looked the same, like within short order. Like he obviously had some swelling, whatever, but he was like basically fine. He had to, you know, take some time off, but he was good. This was an article that has since been removed, or it's just timed out where they are no longer hosting it on their site. Still got his good looks. He's been seen stepping out of LA for the first time since news broke of his facial damage. He's still on the mend. He's seen carrying a towel and an ice pack while heading to his car. So this is still like, while the injury's like fresh, he's like walking around with a fucking ice pack for his face, and doesn't look anywhere near what it looks like here in these new images. No, not at all. Like this is not representative whatsoever of the injury, from what I could tell, but I wanted to get more insight because he actually gave his own personal insight on it back in 2014 when Jimmy Kimmel grilled him about it. So Zac Efron broke jaw on home fountain. This is when it was first revealed. He smashed his face on a fountain and lost 10 to 12 pounds, drinking liquid foods for 6 weeks. What an awkward wipeout. It's been 2 months since Efron broke his jaw at home, but now that awkward moment, actor is finally explaining the injury and why he's looking skinnier on his current press tour. So notably skinnier, not more jacked, not muscular hypertrophy, literally in a severe deficit because he can't eat fucking food. He's been drinking through a straw. I was running through my house and slipped and fell on my face, he said during an interview. And I wanted to find this interview harder to find than you would think, because a lot of the details are skipped over and some of the context and whatnot, and you actually see what his face looks like. Unavailable video, private. I dug a little bit. Ended up finding it. So this is the clip in question, and Kimmel asked him, this is literally the injury that everyone is discussing as the cause for his facial changes, literally 8 years ago, over 8 years ago at this point.
You had a pretty bad accident like a few months ago, right?
I actually did, yeah. I actually broke my jaw.
I'm observing your jaw to see you had it wired shut and all that.
I did. I was like running through my house and I slipped and fell and hit my face.
So again, he's observing his jaw, and to me, he looks the same. You know, he is pretty much healed at this point. Who knows? Maybe he has some residual swelling, whatever it is, but he had his jaw wired shut from this incident, and this is the incident in question that he literally just touched on in the ET interview in 2022. But I'll let him elaborate, and then we can kind of circle back and talk about some of the other claims as far as, you know, hypertrophy of the opposing muscles, the HGH use, a lot of these, you know, cosmetic surgeons and Beverly Hills fucking specialists think it is or whatever. Because a lot of the comments, again, like no one seems to really know the answer. And even in that ET viral video that just went, you know, live a few days ago, very, very inconclusive and ambiguous. But let's continue.
How many times have I told you not to run through the house?
Dude, I know. Well, actually, let me start over. This story starts kind of cool because I have a fountain in my house. That's kind of dope, right?
Oh, wow.
So, yes,
Wow.
I was running through and slipped on water and hit my chin on the fountain in my house. It's not a big fountain, but it's a fountain in my house.
Yeah.
And
So yeah, you know, he slips, falls, breaks his jaw on the fountain, and it's not a pretty scene. He gets up, and apparently his brother looks at him and says immediately, you know, get to the hospital. You're not looking too hot right now.
my brother was there, and I was like, oh, jeez, man. He's like, are you okay? And I go, I don't know, man. Am I okay? And he goes, no, you're not okay.
Oh, really?
And I go, he's like, we're going to the hospital. And I'm like, okay. Next thing I know, I'm like waking up.
So he ends up, you know, jaw wired shut, 6 weeks, liquid diet, as you would expect. And when you were in a severe deficit, like literally the cause of losing weight is a deficit of energy. If you're in a calorie deficit, that is how you lose weight. There's no other explainable reason other than energy intake relative to energy expenditure. So if you are losing 10 to 12 pounds during a time frame where you have this injury, because you literally can barely even consume food, you're drinking shit through a straw, what is the probability that you're going to experience hypertrophy in muscles that you've been using your whole life simply to counterbalance the supporting lack there of things that have been injured in that surrounding area to then support the chewing? Like the whole story just is so odd and seems like such a reach. But of course, I could be wrong, but to me, this just seemed kind of insane, to be honest.
And
Did you get stitches and everything like that?
yeah, my jaw was wired shut and I couldn't talk.
How long was the jaw wired shut?
6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly.
Was this
It
before? Did you have to drink your?
Dude, I was
Thanksgiving
drinking
turkey through
food
a straw?
solidly for 6 weeks, just only liquid food.
Oh, that's gotta.
So a month and a half recovery time, and like he's back getting interviewed about this in January of 2014, and this happened like, you know, a couple months prior, and his face does it not look the same? To me, it looks representative of what Zac Efron looks like, but notably a very like pretty boy face, which I think kind of ties into what may have actually happened, which I'll get to after. Let's continue.
Be terrible.
Yeah, it sucked.
And would you get special foods brought in, or would you throw things into like the Vitamix and blend it up?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
Yeah,
Wow.
that Vitamix came. Yeah, shout out to Vitamix. You saved my friggin' life.
Wow, that would be quite a commercial for them. It saved.
So I think later, or at this point, he probably mentions the weight loss, and it's fairly dramatic. Like to lose that much weight, you're in a pretty significant deficit to lose that much weight that quickly.
Zac Efron's life.
It did.
And you lost a lot of weight from that too, right?
I did, man. I lost like 10 or 12 pounds.
Wow,
So-
you should write a book about how to lose weight by.
By smashing your jaw. So that is why apparently he looked slimmer when he was doing his promotional tour for for the movie at that time. And as you would expect, like when you circle all the way back to 2022 now, where he says that he had this compensation and his masters grew really big, they just got really, really big and you know, if I actually valued what people thought of me to the extent they may think I do, I definitely wouldn't be able to do this work. But it's like, is that really the case? Because to me, this almost seems like the opposite potentially. Not necessarily faulting him for it, but it is really odd to make that statement so matter of fact, and for this, you know, awkward interaction to be occurring during the interview where they're talking about, you know, you wouldn't get plastic surgery, and he's just like, yeah, I definitely fucking wouldn't. You know, it was clearly an injury from 2013. This is what the comment section is. As someone who had the same surgery as him and had to fight off rumors in high school and college, I get what he's going through. He had the implant done instead of the reconstruction, and he's still really swollen. I was almost 2 years post-op. I feel for him. But again, this is a 2013 injury. Was there another jaw break that happened that he's not mentioning? Like, you think if it was actually that, you would just be like very, very forward and be like, yeah, last year I had a horrible injury again. This is the second time I fucked up my jaw, believe it or not. Crazy, wild scenario. How the fuck did it happen? I don't know. But instead, he gets very, very uptight about the situation, not very open to discuss it. You would think it would be a wild story to be explaining if this happened to you twice and just saying exactly why it happened. But when you were trying to divert attention away from the subject matter, getting almost like annoyed about it when it's brought up, saying how you almost died from a 2013 incident, being very short with the interviewer, you can't help but be skeptical about what the actual reason is. Down here, he's obviously on HGH. Look at his hands. He's prepping for the wrestling movie, The Iron Claw. Yeah, but his face was like this before, but HGH does have the widening of the jaw. I did not see his hand, and we'll have to take a look at that. Could be HGH and steroids. It seems he landed in the hands of bad doctors / plastic surgeons who were using him for his money and not advising him as they should. Sad face. Yeah, he did not get lip injections, and steroids and HGH don't enlarge your bones, right? Crying, laughing face. Does anyone know what happened to his jaw? It happened in 2013. Face changed way after that, man. Exactly, that was a long time ago. His jaw got huge just before, you know what, I think. And the swelling went down since. Before and after pics are dramatic. And I think he has lip fillers too. I still love him, but he for sure got work done. He said in the original interview the reason his jaw looks different is because after his surgery, the jaw breaking the muscles in his face has no longer worked in the same unison they're meant to. Due to that, he has to have ongoing physio, but he stopped physio for a while when filming because his masters grew in size to have a much more squared, wide look. Yeah, he got the jaw surgery in 2013 after shattering his jaw, but what the fuck does that have to do with this recent surgery he got within the last year that makes him look different? Exactly, as I posted in this comment section, he literally has a superhero John Cena looking jaw now, which isn't going to suddenly happen with just reconstructive surgery. I don't know what he was aiming for, but it looks like Glenn from Family Guy. He looks awful. So there's a lot of rough comments in the comment section. A lot of people being very, judgmental on his decision-making process. A lot of people speculating about hormone use. What I can say for certain is it has absolutely nothing to do with human growth hormone and actual anabolic steroids. This is something that, in his peak of physical accomplishment and body composition changes for Baywatch, for example, did he have any of these morphological changes in his, skull No, he didn't. And that is when he would have been at the peak of exposure, whatever he was using. He actually touches on drug use very, very lightly in that Men's Health article, which we'll get into probably in another video. But if you were going to be using like high amounts of growth hormone for, you know, recovery purposes, if you're going to be using anabolic steroids, like it would have been used back in his role preparation for some of the most physically demanding jobs ready to look at his peak, which I'm sure there was some involvement of that, but it has no significant impact to a degree that could change your facial structure this dramatically, this quickly. If you're going to have acromegaly and facial changes from human growth hormone deployment, this would be something that would occur at a very abusive dosages that he probably wouldn't have been using to begin with, and over years and years of exposure. This isn't something that happens overnight like he had. To me, this seems representative of cosmetic intervention. It is not his, you know, masseters overgrowing during an injury like we can see right here. This is when the injury happened, and if anything, he looks like pretty much the fucking same. And for years thereafter, he remained the same and had no structural changes whatsoever that were notable other than just classic, you know, aging process where he looked like he was just becoming a more mature version of himself, essentially, with no cranial changes whatsoever. His jaw wasn't getting dramatically different. The only changes you would really see over the years were if he was getting fatter or slimmer and leaner for a role, and then you would see more prominence of his facial features, but never see like actual bones and shit sticking out that literally weren't there before, like you have now. So no, this isn't like a bodybuilding related thing from a masseter hypertrophy, like overcompensation situation, especially in a calorie deficit when you're losing 10 to 12 pounds. You were not going to be overcompensating with muscles that are growing when you are severely depriving yourself and barely able to eat food, and then sustaining those changes thereafter and somehow having them like only visually appear. Like, it's just the timeline makes no sense, the explanation makes no sense, none of it makes sense. And I think he's kind of banking on the fact that it doesn't make sense, which is fine because he just doesn't want to talk about it whatsoever, and people are kind of imposing the situation on because he's a public figure who, if you have a major dramatic cosmetic change, like it's reasonable that you're going to get asked about it. And I'm sure that's why he gets so touchy about it, because it is probably, from what I speculate, to be actual surgical intervention from a cosmetic aspect. And I think the actual reason would be to look more masculine. I think he is, now I could be way the fuck off because it could just be, who knows what it is for sure. My speculation would be that he wants to get away from the pretty boy image, the High School Musical Zac Efron guy, which I'm sure he has been recently. I don't follow his movies enough to really know like what the perception of him is overall, but I imagine getting a more masculine look with more masculine features would be something that is appealing to somebody who has softer, more, you know, pretty boy type features and is seen potentially as getting pigeonholed into certain roles that may otherwise be like the pretty boy, I don't know, the guy teenage girls have a crush on, whatever it is, rather than like a serious masculine, like, you know, mature actor, which may be what he is trying to transition to. And perhaps his goal was something a bit more subtle, but still noticeable. And it kind of went off the deep end a little bit and became way more dramatically noticeable than was otherwise intended. Or maybe this is exactly what he wanted, and he is, you know, not very happy with the outcome of the situation from a people's perception of it and like bringing to light of it. And who really knows what the real situation is? But to me, this is like, you know, people are saying handsome Squidward shit like, you know, Quagmire, you know, chin or whatever it was in the comment section about Family Guy, or Glenn Quagmire from Family Guy, and saying like wild shit about what he looks like. And, you know, it's not unfounded when you look way different and you know, the way people are saying it in a derogatory fashion is obviously not ideal, because this is, you know, probably a permanent change, and it is kind of just generally rude. But I mean, the change again is fucking huge, and it does seem to be representative of what I would imagine to be pursuing a more masculine look that is going to afford him more opportunity in the realm of mature, you know, 35 plus year old, like masculine male type roles relative to his, you know, pre-30s kind of like pretty boy image that he's trying to get away from. That's my only logical conclusion, what would justify somebody who is otherwise seen as one of the best looking guys in the industry to then have a surgical change. But again, I can't really rationalize it. I can't make sense of it. All I can really say is it is not human growth hormone. It's not bodybuilding drugs. It's not this masseter hypertrophy overcompensation situation. In my opinion, I think this is actual straight up plastic surgery. And we've seen this in other guys, like even in the fitness industry. This is a lesser known example because it's not mainstream, but there's a guy named Sergi Constance who looks fucking incredible. This was his baseline. He's like one of the best looking guys in the industry. And then he ended up getting what seems to be a very, very similar intervention done that made him have a similar outcome to Zach, where all of a sudden he has like very like a, you know, protruding chin, more of a jaw, more masculine features, but largely perceived in a negative aspect because he had such a good looking natural baseline that anything deviating from that is, you know, just comes across as a bit more cosmetic touch-up-y and like, you know, very, very unnatural looking compared to what he had. And it just makes you wonder, like, why did you do it when you were literally like a fucking 10 out of 10 dude to begin with and had everything going for you? We can't really wrap our heads around how guys, even at the top, still have their own insecurities and their own demons they're dealing with. And it's just wild to think that, you know, there are a lot of people that wish they had, you know, better genetics or better this, a better hand of cards they were dealt. But even the guys with seemingly the best hand of cards, they still have their own, you know, insecurities, their own, what they perceive to be shortcomings and things they would, you know, wish were different and whatnot. And they're insecure about it. And it's just wild that at all levels this happens, even with the Efrons in the world, the Sergi Constances of the world. And I can only speculate. Again, I don't really know because I can't rationalize in my head why Sergi would do this, because there's like, it's not like he's preparing for a role that he needs to look more masculine. The guy was literally like fucking Giga Chad incarnate already, and yet they're still doing this stuff. So no, I don't think Zach's story about like a 2013 incident, even if it was a recent incident, you know, it still wouldn't make sense to me. It's not the drugs. It's not the bodybuilding stuff. It is literally, in my opinion, plastic surgery, but I could be wrong. It's not wisdom teeth. It's not swelling from fucking, you know, an early 2021 wisdom teeth removal or whatever it is. I think this is like very significant plastic surgery work. But again, I don't fucking know anything about plastic surgery, so I could be wrong, but it seems like a fairly educated guess that's likely reasonably accurate. And he seems to be pretty touchy about the situation, and understandably so if you had an outcome that was undesired or is otherwise so dramatic that it is bringing like negative attention to your image when the goal was essentially probably to be perceived as like a net benefit, or else why the fuck would you do it to begin with? So that's my perception. I'm surprised no one has actually looked at the original interview that was done like almost a decade ago to see the actual situation being described here, and it's just taking at face value these details here. But from a bodybuilding standpoint, a drug intervention standpoint, none of it makes fucking sense to me. And I think this is just a result of, you know, trying to elevate his image in Hollywood and, you know, trying to create a more masculine look that is representative of what he is trying to achieve in the industry. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. All the comments help the algorithm. They're much appreciated. Like, subscribe, check out my blog, moreplacefordates.com. Follow me on Instagram at moreplacefordates, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below. My preventative medicine hormone replacement therapy platform, Gorilla Mind, nootropic formulas, Gorilla Mode, pre-workout formulas that design myself from scratch, recommended diet model for gaining muscle and sports performance, recommended hair loss prevention products, as well as clothing company that sponsors me, as well as anything else I'm associated with. It's all down there in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.
Reporting for duty. You can't stop us. By the holy light! Spoiler! For justice, I'll bring the Megaton!
Let's see. Okay, so we're here with Greg O'Gallagher, also known as Kino Body on YouTube. If you have not seen his stuff before, he's probably one of the OG natural fitness YouTubers, and you know, there's a lot of speculation if he's actually natural or not, which is sort of what we're going to be getting into in this video. So do you want to give like a quick background of your
history on social media, or just like, I don't know, what you're all about? Because if some people don't know, I don't know, your history on the platform, as well as kind of like what your messages that you kind of like mainly put out, and how you help naturals achieve the physique of their dreams, sort of thing. If you just want to give like a quick synopsis.
100%. So I actually jumped on YouTube really early, back in, like 2008. When I was 14, 15, I was very into fitness. I was working out a lot. I loved sharing my progress, sharing my workouts. So I actually had a YouTube channel called GOG9 when I was a teenager. And some of my videos were hitting like, 100,000 views. And then I shut down that channel because I was a little bit shy. I was young, and, my whole school kind of saw the YouTube channel and started playing it in class. And I didn't love the attention back then. I was actually quite shy. And then I stopped the channel. And then at 19 years old, I restarted the channel, focusing on really teaching fitness and teaching sort of what I wanted to see in the fitness industry, which was teaching men how to look like movie stars. I had movies coming out with Christian Bale, with Ryan, Gosling, and these guys got in really good shape. And that was the kind of condition I wanted to aspire to, looking like I was on the movie screen, not just bulking up and getting bigger, and getting huge, not just losing weight, but having that Greek god movie star type physique. So in 2011, 2012, I started Kino Body. I started really teaching people how to get that lean, chiseled look. At the time, I was probably like 180, 185 and, 14% body fat. And it was like really my goal on like how to master, getting that chiseled look, like getting very defined. And that's when I started talking about fasting, started really pushing the idea of training, just 3 days per week, focusing on the key lifts, the key muscle groups, so on and so forth. And like ultimately just finding, the challenge, of course, has always been like getting lean. How do you make that diet so easy, so enjoyable to follow, so I can actually stick to it? Because as a 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old, I couldn't stick to any diets. I tried almost everything. Tried doing small little meals, hitting the calories perfectly, and I just failed on everything. And I had to simplify it to make it really, really enjoyable. And the result was very good. I started getting leaner with my, focusing on 3 lifts, reverse period training and stuff like that. Started getting very, very strong. And, I kind of achieved a very, very good condition, especially at 24, 25. That is actually kind of a good point to reference, is that like 24, 25 was really where I got the steroid accusations. I sliced down to about 168, 169 pounds at 5'10". My body fat, I never did a DEXA scan at that point, but my body fat levels were very, very low. Interestingly enough, during that period, I was actually doing very, very, very low volume of training. My body, funny enough, responds well to low volume, literally 4 exercises a workout, two hard sets, sometimes 3. That's where I make crazy enough, that's where I make my best gains. And that's where the roid accusations started. At the time, I was fucking so pissed. I was getting so many steroid accusations, and I was freaking so pissed off. It affected me a lot. And then, like anyone going on YouTube, when you first start on YouTube and you get hate, it fucking pisses you off. And I just remember seeing all these videos coming up, and I was like, fuck, I wish I could just prove I'm freaking natural. I wish I could do something. And then that period, I was doing a lot of like video shoots where I'd lift 100-pound, 120-pound dumbbells. We were rushed. I wouldn't warm up. I'd do dragon flags, and I did in my program. I did a lot of heavy weighted chin-ups, and I had a very very bad injury, elbow tendonitis, and so I literally, to the point where I couldn't even text. It would hurt. I had to do voice notes. I couldn't type. Couldn't work out very well. And I did a bunch of different like sports massage therapy. And it took about 3 months to find someone that knew what the hell they're doing. And so for 3 months, I documented this on YouTube. I did not work out. And I did lose some muscle and put on a bit of fat. Got my testosterone levels checked, was around 620. And then I did another testosterone test as I put on some muscle over the course of 3 months. and my testosterone levels were like 660. But that's sort of like the mid-20s phase. Now I'm 30.
How'd you heal? What was the thing that helped your tendonitis the most from the like therapy? Like you said, massage therapy, like, because that's something a lot of people deal with on like tricep push downs and stuff like that. Like, how did you get through that?
Yeah. So, and also, you know, Martin Burkheim, he's definitely talked about this, but when guys are doing like, when you do a lot of texting, typing, and heavy weighted chin-ups, it's a very common occurrence. So I tried doing people told me about active release therapy. I tried doing that, did nothing for me, didn't help at all. They did like some like knife thing where they're scraping the arm down. It was a while ago. And then, you know, you may have heard of, so my camera guy, Mikey Del Monte, his older brother was Vince Del Monte, and he was one of the earlier guys in the fitness scene. And then he shifted completely just to teaching business coaching. But he told me, he's like, I have this guy, he works with professional athletes. You got to see him. And like the wait list was like a month. I'm like, I'm not booking it. A month is so long from now. I didn't care. And then finally Vince Del Monte just booked me, and he's like, you're booked, you're going in tomorrow. I'm like, really? And it's called MAT, muscle activation technique. And it sounds like complete bullshit. Like if someone told me this, I'd think it's bullshit. Basically, he tests your muscle strength, and basically if this was the arm that was injured, I couldn't straighten that down all the way. It'd be like here, I couldn't straighten it down. And they test your muscle resistance, and I'd have no strength. And they do some massage techniques, and then retest me, and I'd be stronger again. And in one session, I felt way better. 2-3 sessions, I was completely working out again, and it was like I did 3 months of spending $200 sessions with no improvement, not working out. And then 2 sessions, I was back to normal. Then the other thing that I had to do was like, I had to stop, you know, really going super heavy on weighted chin-ups. The dragon flag, which is a core exercise, looks sick, but by, you know, the position on the hands relative to the elbows, and there's some torque, is just the injury waiting to happen for me. So I don't do that exercise. And then, you know, once you get up to like, because a lot of guys in my program get very strong, they get up to 100 pound, 120 pound weighted chin-ups. Once you're over 100 pounds for 6 to 8 reps on weighted chins, you don't really have to keep pushing beyond it. Like you kind of learn with some exercises, you know, you kind of milked everything you need out of there. You don't really need to get up to 160 pound weighted chin-ups. At that point, you have all the, you know, the back width you most people want for that movie star look. So then doing more sternum pull-ups, going a bit lighter, pulling the chest to the bar, getting